Okay, recording started. The floor is
Hey.
yours.
Good morning, everyone. So lovely to see all of you. There's a lot of you who have the video on. That's so cool. I'm Isabel. I'm part of the Shaker team, and I will be your host today, and I'm super excited. Today we have quite the full session. As Clarissa mentioned, my fellow Shaker Ola will be in charge of the chat, taking care of you there. But we are obviously even more excited to be guests today of Cisco, so it's also a learning experience for us. You know, usually we use another tool, but you know, we also have to learn. So we decided to use Cisco technology today. Which brings me to the topic. Today, we have two people from Cisco speaking. We have Frank, who has been working at Cisco for 21 years already, who is very passionate about video and tech. So he's really the right guy to give us some insight also from studies Cisco has done with universities, and also his fellow teammate Clarissa. She's a collaboration specialist, and she works basically at the intersection of tech and business to find out how tech can contribute to a productive and cool workplace. And speaking of workplaces, we also have Tim Florian with us. He's head of interior design at of the interior design studio at Vitra. And I read something very cool in his CV. He tackles questions like how can offices turn into experiences, and how should we deal with this very volatile world that's going on right now and the increasing digital possibilities, you know, in this very analog workplace that we're used to. So I think there will be a lot of cool inputs. And to warm up, we will also give you a little poll. So we will, you know, loosen up the conversation. And I would ask Frank to share with us the first poll. So this is for you guys you will see on your screen a little pop-up, and then you can just vote on the question, and then we'll talk about what's going on in your mind regarding the state of video in your company. Yeah, in the meantime, I can go through those as well until the poll shows up. So the topics we'll cover, I think, are very closely connected to people I had the pleasure to introduce. How does the company culture really influence how you deal with video? What's the learnings there? What can we do? What are the typical mistakes when switching to a video format or when you use it? So there's a lot of learnings there that will be shared from our experts. And then how can we use video or other tech to create a healthy, sustainable communication? Because I feel maybe a lot of you now had to switch completely to virtual communication, and maybe this can also be stressful. So we'll also touch upon that. And obviously, Tim can give us a perspective on office spaces. What does all of that mean for the office space? How should we rethink what an office is, what a workplace is, and how can this be designed in a sustainable and healthy way going forward from now?
On the polling, let's move on. I have a little hiccup here at the moment. Yeah, let's not lose time here.
Let's get back to that later. So maybe Frank, do you want to start us off with your input?
I think Clarissa is going first.
I'm sorry. Yeah, Clarissa.
Yeah,
no
video
problem.
culture and yeah. So Clarissa.
Yeah. So let's kick it off. Thank you so much, Isabel, for this nice introduction, and thank you for all those many people that are joining us in this hour together around how video culture is not just an app that you can install. It has been a little bit provocative, but we did that because we wanted to be a little provocative. It's such a relevant topic at the moment, and we wanted to address it and have also your opinion in that. So let's have this also very interactive and exchange our opinions. So with my part, I will touch base on video culture in terms of the implication that it has and what are the common mistakes that we should avoid in there. I will then hand it over to Frank. Frank will then hand it over to Tim, and then I will close it up again with some additional information from my side. We decided as a team to start it with a very personal story. So a personal story often resonates much better than a lot of statistics. And this story is about me and my experience. So I belong to that millennial, so the generation Y. I'm in my early 30s, and one of the labels that we have been hearing for long is that we have a reputation for job hopping, and that's actually what happens to me. So being also that generation that knows or experience Erasmus as the standard of going abroad and studying here and there and doing internships, I always found it super interesting to experience and get exposed to different type of workplace. So I've been working in different company sides, startups up to multinational company, different industry, fast-moving consumer good, pharmaceutical, also IT, of course, different leadership styles. So giving you an example, that office where you don't leave before your manager is leaving, because that's the way it works. You're a bit scared, and even if you don't have anything to do, you just stay until the end. Or offices where home office is absolutely fine, and even if you come at work at 11 and you leave at 2, no one is suspecting that you are not performing or that you are not engaged. Or offices where you need to badge, so everything is measured, and the productivity needs to happen in the office. And of course, also different level of access to technology. So whether technology has been used to enable a productive and collaborative workplace or not, and how much of this has been implemented. So all this gives me a fairly overview of different views and different way of working. And I can say, and this is Clarissa speaking, I'm not speaking as a Cisco employee, but really as my personal story, is that that joining Cisco, which happened 2.5 years ago, was an eye-opener for me. It was an eye-opener because at Cisco, video culture is just the normal, and this since 20 years. Frank will elaborate on that. But once I've joined there, I've understood how my work before wasn't that effective. At Cisco, we have a place, a device in every place, a video endpoint in every place, and also in every office, enabling us to work always with a video on, and also have a culture that expects you to have a video on all the time. I remember my first meeting that I've joined at Cisco. It was with some people joining abroad, and so we were not all physically in the same place, and I didn't have my video on because for me it was just not very clear and normal that you need video. What you need is the content you're sharing, and the first feedback was why you don't have a video on. And so it's not even asked to please do it, but it's just expected. And why I'm telling this to you is that this has a very big impact on how I work. So I've been feeling after a meeting where people has a video on, and I do share my face with them as well, that my energy level is much higher, that my engagement is definitely much higher. I'm more productive, not as a team, but also as not as an individual, but also as a team member. We are much more focused, and that's super key. Like, we live in this world where everyone is seeking for our own attention, and so we tend to multitask. But the moment that you have a video on, you know that you need to be present, you need to actively listen, and indirectly you're just focusing on what you're doing, and you're trying to make the best out of that meeting. FOMO is another word that I like to use. FOMO, for those that don't know it, stands for fear of missing out. And so you don't have that feeling anymore. And I'm telling you, in the context of Cisco, where since February, we are not allowed to go in the office. So we have to work from home, and you can only go in the office if there are business critical situations where you also need to have your general manager approval. So with that in mind, people may think that I would miss my team, and I do until to a certain extent, but because we are all having such a nice experience with video, and video is just there, and we can have a nice audio video experience, and you can easily see how people react to what you're saying, how people are facially adjusting and responding to what you're telling, and the other way around. You have the feeling you are there, you are not dispersed, and so you are not feeling that you are alone. And then, of course, the whole well-being, it's another component. The fact that you are more productive makes you feel happier about yourself and about the team you've been working with. And so you're also much more productive. And at the end of the day, you have also more time for you to take care of yourself, to do physical sport, whatever it's important to you, but to find your balance and feel happy about the day that you have passed, even if sitting alone in your own home office. So with that, I would like to share with you a couple of key learnings, do's and don'ts. So the one being active sponsorship. It's super important that if you want to enable a video-first culture or a user-centric culture, you definitely have to have big sponsors leading by examples. So you have to have the top management doing the same so that people below can follow. Brings rules and say why. I give you an example on that. In my team, our manager has set up a Monday morning call for the team to get together. And in this invite, there is, of course, a room that has been booked, as well as a link to join via video remotely. And there is also a clear statement. Please come physically if you can. If you cannot, join via video on. And if you cannot join via video on, please tell me why. And there are circumstances where video is just not recommended. For example, if you're working on the go, if you're working from your mobile, if you're walking, or if you're driving, it's often not a good experience to have someone that keeps moving. So in that moment, it's okay not to have a video on. No second-class citizens. With that, I mean to really consider that everyone matters, also the people remotely. So it's important that they see you and that you can see them, because we want to have a democratic meeting where everyone's voice is heard and listened to. With that also comes bringing and delivering a nice experience for the people joining from home. Act now and be credible. That's something a bit difficult, because now suddenly home office has become, it's okay. But I think as a learning for those companies where home office wasn't okay before, could be, so this learning could be in the future, make sure to anticipate trends and to apply them before, because otherwise, for example, with video, people may think that you want to control them. And so if you can act and anticipate certain trends, the transition will be much easier. And last but not least, technology enables also a much better well-being for the people. For all the topics that I've mentioned before, you feel more empowered, you feel more energized, you feel more connected. And also in situation where there is about negotiating or giving feedback, it is much, much better if you can see people face to face and can look in their eyes and work through that difficult conversation, whether it is a negotiation or a feedback, as an example. So with that, I hope I could give you a little bit of an overview of what my personal experience was, and you could get maybe one or the other good inspirations. Those here, what I'm sharing right now is an overview of questions that has been collected by the Shake Up the Workplace team. And so the one that I've signed in green are the ones that I think I've answered to. We will, by the end of the session, answer to all of them. In case you see that some of them will not be tackled, feel free to chat to raise your hands or unmute yourself and ask the question, because we want this to be a learning session for you rather than us just presenting to you. So with that, I will hand it over to Frank and talk to you later.
Thanks a lot. Maybe time for a question, or maybe Isabel or Ola, you have some input you want to put into the session right now?
We have actually the poll ready. So if I will now share the screen to share with everybody the instructions on how to use the poll. And if you've been with us on our calls before, we ask you to go to menti.com and insert the code 5298726. And there will be 2 questions waiting for you. Can you see my screen now?
No.
We cannot.
No, not yet.
Okay.
Now.
Perfect. There was Tim. So again, menti.com. Grab your phone. That's the easiest probably. And then type 5298726. And I will flip to the first question. Great to see that some people are already answering. How many of your calls are video calls in your company? And if you are just joining us now, you have the joining instructions. So menti.com, ideally on your phone, and then use the code to give us some answers. And I see more and more participants are joining us there.
All right. It's interesting to see. I think, thank you for sharing on such a personal level, Clarissa. I really loved also when we discussed before the session that you have really an overview of many different companies, which I think is a total advantage of on a personal level. Maybe how was it before Cisco? And you don't have to like name names, but just more, how did people handle, you know, hybrid situations where some people were there physically, others had to join virtually, or when there were maybe all virtual meetups? Were there these rules you shared? Was it lived there, or was it more, you know, each team did their own version? How was it in other companies?
Okay. Thank you for the question, Isabel. I'll keep it very general, so I won't mention names. The rules that those suggestions that I've made, they are based on things that I've observed, and they were not lived in that way everywhere. There were certain situations where having people joining from abroad meant you need to call them, and then you call, one person was talking, and then you are passing over to the other people physically with you in the meeting, the conversation that was happening, and that's definitely not ideal. And then there were some others, of course, where you where we had a solution where we could meet, so have everyone joining this platform and have a conversation, but the idea of having video on was simply just not there. So and it's quite common. I think this pandemic has made a huge, or has helped to make a huge shift in celebrating and seeing the advantages of a video first culture, but is still not an established culture that you can see in many places, and this across industry size of a company and maturity level of a company, I would say. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. And I think we also have one in the chat. Ola, let's maybe first go to Julia's question. Yeah. So in their company, they have a lot of international calls. So depending where you are, it's either super early or super late. And then maybe you might be in your pajamas or not yet ready for the day, wearing no makeup, no hair done and stuff. So how do you deal with that? If people are really very spread?
I think time zone is definitely an issue. I mean, if people are just in other ways, in other completely different time zone, it becomes hard to have a live meeting where everyone is meeting at the same time. So of course, not the ideal platform to have a meeting for them. Regarding differences because people are still in pajamas or not, I think it shouldn't be a blocker. Actually, it should give a much closer window to people's reality. I mean, yeah, if you don't have perfect hair every day, well, that's human. Actually, it gives you a much more human dimension to who you are, right? And I would encourage to just put aside this this idea that we all need to always look perfect on a video. We just need to be the way we are, and that's fine too. That would be my point. I don't know if Frank or Tim would like to add to that, or anyone else would like to comment, because I think there is no one size fits all.
Yeah, it's not a new challenge for us, since we're working since many years internationally very strongly. So I mostly have global customers. Honestly, we try to respect time zones as much as we can, but sometimes there are late calls. That's for us typically when talking with the US. A late call is not a problem. I mean, working from home with video is just common, and you're not yet in the pajama. So even at 12 o'clock, I'm not in the pajama. So that's not a problem. In the morning, honestly, it's okay. You just say, I'm not turning on my video for this call, and that's okay. If you're having an important call with a customer, people tend to say, okay, I'm dressed up and ready to be good on video at 4 o'clock in the morning. But these things are happening pretty rarely. Mm-hmm. So I think it's absolutely okay to say, why not turning on video? But people will ask. That's our culture somehow. Okay, is your camera broken or something? I mean, it's not normal not to have video, but it's absolutely okay to say why not, and nobody will argue about this. So I think we handle it very pragmatically, and it's actually not a problem. I don't see it as a problem. That's our personal experience.
Thank you. I think that also answers Andy's question from the chat. I hope, Andy, I see you up there on my screen. You're nodding. I think that's fine, right? So you make an extra effort if there is a sales situation or something very special. Yeah, definitely. Tim, if you want to add anything, now's the time.
I'm just looking at the time, so like, how much to add or to go further with our input. So I'll leave it like this.
Okay.
Thank
so
you.
I'm taking over then. Is that fine, or you want
yes,
to
please, Frank. Go ahead.
No?
We look forward to what you're sharing.
Yep. Good. This is where we stopped. Just a brief overview. I mean, at Cisco, and that's important. I mean, look to the lower left. This is January 2020. This is before COVID and before the pandemic. 61% of our employees didn't go to the office anyway. I mean, this is just normal. Working remotely was always the norm. This was even the norm when I started with Cisco in 1999. That's a long time ago. So it was always in the culture that we are about flexibility. We don't have to explain ourselves why not being in the office. We were empowered to do the right choices. If I believe it's better working from home, I stay at home. If I want to see my team or meet people or just be in the office and meet people I didn't plan to meet, I go to the office. It's my choice. I never have to explain. I never had to explain myself. I think that's probably a very strong foundation to add video to this culture, just to make things better. And this is what happened over the years. And I would say since 10, probably 12 years, we have an extremely strong video culture. We started 2006 with tailor presence. Tailor presence was really about simulating sitting across a table It was a life-size technology. That means, I mean, people are not shrinked or blown up, normally shrinked, full HD and so on. It was to simulate sitting together. And then I think 2 years later, we acquired Tandberg, a video conferencing vendor from Norway. And that brought the scale. So since then, I mean, you see that here, we are running way above 20,000 video endpoints at Cisco. So most of the salespeople and people being in knowledge worker positions and so on, dealing a lot with customers, have video at home. That's what I have. That's what Clarissa have. Hilma, most of the people have video and video equipment at home. It belongs to our work environment. We also are very strongly working in virtual teams, so especially global teams, if you're covering global customers. So you have no chance to meet. Yeah, this would be far too slow, far too expensive. And yeah, I mean, in the end, also flying is not the best for this planet. I think despite COVID, we have some other crises to manage in the next years. So since then, I mean, Cisco always had a very, very, very strong culture of flexibility, working remotely, working in virtual teams, being, let's say, loosely managed, very much self-empowered. And if that meets with the video technology, I think the whole thing flies. So just to keep that into context here, we are not having a video culture since COVID. We had it before, and for us, the switch to, I personally was 1.5 days a week in the office. I did the statistics on that one because I was interested on how often am I in the office. Now I'm 5 days at home. Yeah, I meet my customers only virtually because most of them are not allowing to visit them anymore. Before it was, I mean, a stronger part of my work week was really working remotely anyway, or being very flexible here. So that was one of the questions, is Cisco still using tailor presence? And I mean, just to maybe talk about tailor presence, what does it mean? I think it's a video on a quality level where it starts to make fun. It's not a compromise. It's not something weird that you're looking strangely or into a small device and then you see people. It's more the lifelike experience, and that is something, I mean, it's many years back, and that was, let's call it the early days of high-end video conferencing or telepresence, and we used it a lot, and we are simply used to that. And I mean, it was a very enriching experience to have this type of conversations. And I mean, these pictures somehow illustrate the nature of this. It's something happening more or less like being together, and we did a lot of research also. I mean, how can you create the more informal pieces here? This seems to be very hard to recreate. I mean, what happens in the office with the serendipity, people meeting each other unplanned and so on, this is something very hard to simulate. But the better the quality is, the better the setups are, the more easy things are working, the closer you get also into these aspects of informal communication. But it's a problem not yet solved. I mean, many people and many companies try to run virtual, let's say, virtual coffees, virtual cocktail evenings, virtual, you name it. I mean, also privately, I find it stressful, and our experience is if you're calling out a virtual coffee session and having more than 4 to 5 people, it doesn't work. It becomes a formal meeting somehow. Suddenly somebody expects that somebody is leading the thing, and maybe you have a manager in that, and that's our experience. Anyway, this is what we want to have. We want to have, I mean, as close as a real life experience. That is why we called it telepresence that day. In the meantime, full HD quality is becoming more mainstream. That's for sure. A lot of things improved in the recent years. One other question was, does it work between or are there differences in cultures? My experience is with the US super easy. I mean, that's not a problem. with the Asia Pac and some other countries, maybe you see some differences, but I mean, I also had very interesting and very cool things. It's just an example here with a conference we had between people in Nagoya in Japan and Davos that days. I mean, this really works. It works if the fine tuning between the human interaction really is captured by these high quality video. It works. I think some cultures are tending to be, I mean, not to be in front. Yeah. Some others are having absolutely no problem to show everything on video, including all the, I don't know, baseball fan things in the background and so on. There are differences, but I don't see any no-go cultures where video is simply not working. That's not my experience. I think it's more likely driven by corporate cultures and working cultures than by, let's say, country cultures. That's my experience. Don't be afraid. We cannot talk on video to Japan. That shouldn't be a showstopper. How about, I mean, our experience with what are the top guys are doing? I mean, in the days before the pandemic, we had a lot of virtual events. That's almost yeah, it's not weekly, but it's a monthly session, for example. It comes or it travels between countries, but the setup is the following: you have some local events, and then you have the entire Cisco connecting to this. It's called Cisco Beat. It's our top management, top leadership. This is our CEO, by the way. And then the whole thing was a kind of a hybrid event. It was virtually, it was global, it was using video, and these times are a bit over. But I mean, it was really about having the teams here in Singapore joining on their video endpoints in the office and being part of the conference. And actually, this works pretty nice. I mean, the impression you get attending this event is really, I mean, wow, this is one global Cisco. That's incredible. This is what we use a lot. So, I mean, bottom line here is, I mean, video is absolutely something for everyone at Cisco, including our CEO, everybody. We are just used to that, and this is what we are doing since many years. It developed, and I mean, every event will always be enabled to allow remote people to join the best quality we can get to. And that's just a fundamental design principle of all the events. You have real people, maybe gathering people in one room, not in these days at the moment, but you're including everyone and everybody can join. This is from Monday. So this is how these Cisco Beat, we now call it Cisco Checkins. Chuck Robbins is running it from his home. I mean, why not? Again, here is we want to be together somehow. We want to be on the spot. And here, I mean, Chuck is really calling out everybody, you got a day off, go and vote. I mean, that was one very strong message here. But I mean, this is continuing, and we transferred the whole thing now to the home. And there is no big, I mean, let's say difference. Of course, the setup looks different, but I mean, the power of using video here, creating transparency and I mean, keeping the corporate culture of being open and telling people what's going on. That's just continuing, and video is the thing to do here. I mean, an email can never transport a message like this. That brings me to the point here, and that's a very old picture, by the way. Maybe some of you knows that. These are the old Mac versus PC ads, but it brings it to the point. What I observe is that, I mean, video was put to the, let's say, put to many people on the rush. And it's okay to do it on the rush, but now I think it was a bit like, I mean, taping here a camera, now you're video enabled. Out of our experience, that is probably a good first step, absolutely, but longer run, you may suffer from, I mean, is good enough really good enough? I mean, what happens if you eat this ravioli? It's sold to you, I mean, it's healthy, Swiss meat and so on. But if you eat that every day, you start to get a bit fed up, right? Because yeah, you're maybe not hungry after eating that, but it doesn't give you the quality what you need. I mean, so many things are missing, and yeah, I mean, forgive me this kind of analogy here, but I think it brings it to the point, a certain kind of fatigue, that you're looking for quality and some real experiences here. And also, I mean, everybody's now, or a lot of knowledge workers are in the home office, and there, is it just about me and my work? No, it's me, my work, and the team I need to do my work. I think that's super important. So this is exactly where I'm sitting. I'm sitting on this chair in front of the computer and looking into the video system. And this is my setup at home I'm using right now. I'm using that since many, many years. And the reason for this setup is the following. First of all, I mean, it's a bit pragmatic. Yeah, I mean, nothing really fancy apart from the video system on the wall. Yeah, that's some expensive equipment. But I'm using this setup since many, many years. It gives me a lot of peace of mind. It's super defined. I mean, the background you see here is real. It's the blue thing on the left side. Very easy trick. Yeah. Nobody will ever walk behind me. That's the setup. The door there's nothing behind. So this keeps closed. So nobody will walk around me and disturb my, let's say, my presentation. That gives me a lot of peace of mind. I have my content in front of me, but the people I talk to, and that's probably 3 to 4 hours a day, I talk to people in conferences, one-to-one, and so on. They're sitting, let's say, across the desk. Yeah. So first of all, I don't have to look always into my computer to see the people. I'm looking at the people. So it's it's aligned with the camera. And also it's a bit relaxing for my eyes. I mean, I start to wear glasses to look at my computer, but for the normal conversations, I just keep the distance I normally would have if I'm talking to people. So this is my setup. It gives me a lot of peace of mind. It works day in, day out. I don't have to worry about headsets and is it working? Can you hear me? Stuff like this. If you're a heavy worker and using a video a lot and you're running important sessions with customers and so on, that might be a setup you want to have in the end. Something which is safe, high quality, and it costs money. And I think that is something we have to probably keep in mind. Quality normally doesn't come for free, but it gives you a lot of quality in working, quality of life, quality in the conversations. It comes with money at some point. You really, I mean, don't try to do things with a $20 webcam. You will always suffer from, you're not getting to the peace of mind state. I think that is my key message here. Looking after what's happening in video rooms and meeting rooms at my customers, and just a few examples. These are all real examples. I mean, not a very enlightening experience. I mean, how can you get fun of video working in these rooms? It's always a second thought. It's hard to handle. You never know, will it work? How does it work? And these kind of things. And that is something I put a very strong focus on. These things have to work very easily, consistently. You enter the room and then people being remote, they have their place in the room. So this is how it could like. I mean, some real things. Actually, this is almost 5 years old now. These rooms are looking much nicer, more engaging, and you almost want to use this technology. It's I think that's very important. Again, this is something you cannot create with webcams and fiddling around with screens on the wall and complex setups. You have to come to a point where entering a room is not creating a headache, but it's pretty obvious how to use that room, and no second class participants in meetings. If you have a nice outside, use it. I mean, why having a dark room? It's not needed anymore. These things can look very nice, and yeah, I mean, Tim, you probably recognize the chairs. It just fits together and gives you not a tech experience, but I mean, it's a quality space. Yeah. And in this quality space, you have place for your remote people in top quality. So I think that is the new normal here. We see for the next couple of months, if not years, that most of the people and some of the people are simply not in the meeting room anymore. And then you have to create something where they find their place and they can really, I mean, part of the meeting. On the left side, this is digital whiteboards. I mean, content creation, these kind of things are now coming into play. It's a bit hard to solve in reality, how to make that easy, but there's technology, it starts to ramp up, but it's about the setup of the room. I mean, how do you work in that room? Good. Something I found in your event, Tim. I mean, I think employees are giving back something by working remotely. I think the time has come where companies have to spend some money to allow this working from home because it's part of surviving. While telework was before a kind of a benefit, yeah, you're allowed to work from home. That was seen as a benefit. I think there's a dramatic change at the moment, and yeah, that is my conclusion here and my transition to Tim's slides, yeah, and content.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Frank. We'll just continue, Isabel.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to say now we're right in the topic of your domain. So right over to you, Tim.
All right. Happy to share. Let's see. Can you see my screen? Okay.
Yes, we can.
So thanks a lot, because I think there were a lot of interesting points. I love what you addressed with the, let's say, quiet or like this peaceful state of mind and what we need to achieve. And I think, and you just addressed that, what we need to understand also in the context of workplaces, whether it is at home, in the office, or wherever, we need to understand what the work is. And I think this is what has been challenging also like before COVID. And this is something that is in the ongoing with digitalization. And I think like what we experienced and what we saw in how to bring people together on different levels, the technology is one of the important parts that needs to be integrated in this whole experience. Nevertheless, when we look at like what is happening in the work and the culture, so not just like in the workplace, we usually try to understand what is happening there. One of the strong movements that we see, everybody's always been talking about it, really understanding what this means is more difficult, I would say. It's the connectivity of people, which back in the days was easy because everybody was coming to the office. Now, like whether that's just internally or with externals, visitors coming back to the office, it was easy in physical place. Now, in the digital world, like Frank was also addressing, like you need a proper understanding on how to bring this together. On the other side, it's the collective, like the collaboration of what we see is taking over major parts of the work, where it really matters not about the individual, but connecting people together. What you've been addressing also earlier about the cross-functional teams worldwide and what this means in collaboration in that sense. And on the other side, we have a part where work is still about productivity to a certain degree. So we can connect and collaborate as much as we want, but in the end, we want an output. And I think this is something we also have to put in relation with all of this, where we need the setup, where we need the time and the quiet state of mind to kind of get things done. So what does this mean for the workers? And I think this is just like a glimpse into when we talk about the psychology of spaces, is that we're like, work is changing, technology is changing, and it's very fast. What doesn't change is the human being and how we're driven. We all have our DNA and we can change that. So we're all driven by certain facts that like condition us as human beings. And that's important to always understand in the context in the work and also in the usage of technology, why we need a certain quality in this. So we are driven by social interaction, like with the lack that we had, why we're trying to copy things, like Frank, you were mentioning, like the coffee breaks and everything that people are trying. We're trying to copy things that we're used to, that drives us to people in the virtual world as well, but we can't neglect that. I think this is also the strongest moment which we see here at Vitra, because we have a very physical culture also that brings people back to the office. It's not just the work, it's really the people that you connect with. It's also the impact of nature. So also here, not just like biophilia, but what I mean is good lighting. Simple things like good acoustics, fresh air, things that we need, whether we work in a virtual digital element or in a physical presence. So like some things that we can't neglect, that we always have to consider. Spiritual experience. I don't mean like going to church, but I mean personal growth. And I think this is one of the big challenges on how to connect people to grow from each other in companies in the virtual and the digital world. Because this is spontaneous. Once you see each other, it's like peer-to-peer coaching. Somebody is doing something, you're picking up from it. Easy way how kids learn how to copy that. And it needs environments that work to give you a surrounding that you feel protected. Frank, you were mentioning the easy thing, like that nobody can walk in your past, not just from a visibility point of view, but really of like falling back, having like something where you feel safe, that you can control, like being in control, I think is very important. So what does all of this mean for the workplace, and what are we looking at and experiencing now? I'm not saying the desk is dead, but I think the corporate office as we know them, like the battery of desks, this is over. So it is really about, when it comes to the physical workplaces, the offices, that it's about different experiences, because if it's about the individual work, this is something we can translate and bring to everywhere. So when we look at the workplace ecosystem today, and for Cisco, this has been like this for a long time. It's been in the culture, but what we look at is that the home office is part of it, and also the office, but we also see third places. So like whoever doesn't have the perfect office at home might look into different options where he can have it. And we're also looking into smaller hubs, which like bring the company physically to the people, not just in the headquarters, together. And I think in this ecosystem, we have to understand, and it always connects virtually. So like each component, wherever the persons are, need to connect wherever with the company and with the coworkers. And I think this means that once we go into the experience that we want to create for the companies, it means that you experience work, but you experience work with all senses, whether this is virtually or it's physically. So that's why I think it's really time to rethink the work, the office, and the space experiences. So to see the office still as a very important component where you physically go, but it needs to be different. It needs to be the magnet where you go because you want to recharge. You have an experience that is different. So whatever you can do virtually, connecting, that works for me. But we need to understand what the purpose of the office is, if it's not just like the productive point of view. So it's really about bringing people together on a social level, interconnection, but also become visible. Become visible as a worker, become visible with your work, and kind of share those thoughts with the community, being like almost this, like create a sense of belonging for people. Also drive it to a different experience, like something that nurtures you on the journey coming to work. It should be something like you go for a walk. It should be something where you go back home richer than you've been before. And I think what is important is that we bring to the core what matters, like what is the product, what is the identity, what is the culture that we can communicate here. And I think like when we set all of this, it's almost like we're looking at it more like a club, like where you have this belonging, but where it's the home of work, where it's the community, the collaboration, it's inspiration and visibility, but it always needs to connect to every and each one of them outside. So the experience, if you're not in the office, needs to be given. So, and this is something where I think technology needs to come in, where we need a great quality of technology to ensure that people always like have their sense of belonging, that they matter in what they do, and not just get lost somewhere because they're sitting at home. Let's start this now. So I tried to do it very fast.
Great, great. Thank you, Tim, for sharing that. I think there were a lot of very inspirational things in there that we want to touch on. Just a quick administrative thing. Some of you might have to leave at 11. We're still going to be here doing a little Q&A. So for those of you who have some extra time, please feel free to stay on with us. And maybe I can start it off with the questions, because in the chat we're discussing a point you also touched on, Tim, is kind of how we try to imitate our very analog like office life now in this virtual setup, and that can be frustrating. That also adds to Frank's point, right? That really touched me, to have this peace of mind setup at home. That is kind of like an office, but you integrate it, you have nice light, maybe you have a view and you create a space for yourself. So I thank you both for sharing that. I find it very inspiring. A question I have is, how do you start the conversation with your company to rethink what the office space is? I think some of them are still in a state of either shock or trying to deny that there is going to be a shift. So how can you bring this up in the company, on the company level?
Usually, like, you always start this discussion because somebody discovers there's a pain point. So, and I think we see this on various levels nowadays. Of course, there's an issue on the real estate side, on the facility management, how to run offices, make them secure again. Also, like, from the percentage of like where you might not need the office spaces you had before. It's an administrative, it's an HR topic where it comes to legal issues that haven't been solved in our cultures, where it will become a huge topic. That's why nobody is saying, like, you know, we will force you to work from home because you can. So, like, we allow it as we did before. What I think is starting to change is that the companies are understanding, or like, let's put it that way, everyone in companies is reconsidering work and is reconsidering what they do in their role and is understanding the different contexts. So home office is not, for me, like, I've never understood the concept of home office. Yes, we allow it, and Friday everybody's in the home office. I don't understand the point of that. So home office, like really, I don't. Like, if I need to work with people on a Friday, then I still come to the office because I want to work with them. So, like, and I think this is where we need to understand the qualities and in the options that we have. Something that is almost not that we have this one setup, you sit at the desk and that's where you do everything. But you need to understand really what your role is and how to do things differently in the setups that are given. And I think the variety, as I said, in the ecosystem will be much broader than just like office and home office. So I think it will take time for the people to understand in this, but it will come. But in terms of addressing this topic in the company, as I said, real estate, HR, those are the partners we're discussing like these topics, because we're all in the same boat there.
Tim, I mean, absolutely, I mean, super important points. And I think, I mean, speaking for the technology, we are not the club. We are part of the club. Maybe we are the light show or the cool coffee machine, or maybe the I don't know, craft beer or whatever. Yeah. But the club is something the company has to define. We want to be a club of that nature or that nature. Club stands for corporate culture. And at Cisco, I'm blessed with a corporate culture which is extremely consistent since 20 years. And this is one of the reasons why I'm still at this company. I mean, I straightly joined from university. I stayed here for almost 21 years, and there's a very strong reason for this. It's my club. And in the end, I mean, technology only allows you to give certain elements to the club, but it's not the club. And unfortunately, sometimes if certain things are breaking, then the club is breaking. And I think at the moment we are forced by the pandemic to radically rethink certain things, which are around since many years. So at some point, maybe let's see that the positive side of things, that we have to rethink a bit, I mean, how these clubs are working and what makes the club. Because sooner or later we have to rethink anyway. I mean, that's pretty clear. Sometimes, and that's something we are missing. I mean, when designing a club and when thinking about what type of club we want to be, technology is an afterthought, and this is why I showed these rooms, the real rooms. If you try to squeeze in certain things afterwards, that's not giving you a good experience. And I mean, a club is something normally strongly designed. Yeah, even the pop-up clubs and so on. I mean, there's a lot of thinking about how this thing should look like, and certain things got missed. Shifted to IT, yeah, they deal with it, nobody was interested. But I mean, this element of virtual presence of people, it's in the end, it's about the people, yeah. That's many times missing. It's still an afterthought, and then we are hitting all these uncool setups. And I think that's my call out here. I mean, try to be early here, to think about what is possible today, what is needed today, and bring that together with, I mean, the club is designed not by IT, I hope. Yeah, they tend to do the wrong things. Yeah. Yeah, Tim.
What you're addressing is, it's the overall experience. What you also showed as you're living is in the Cisco corporate culture, with the culture bringing people together, that you have this element of sharing. And this is the idea. Like, how do you always connect to the technology? It's when we think of work concept and enabling people to work, certain tools. Space is one tool, technology is another one. Why should they go separated? Why not think them in one? Because you want to create one experience for the workers, the best one to get the job done.
Yeah, I think that's one of the main messages. Yeah. Still, network matters. So whoever wonders, is my internet access at home very good? mediatest.webex.com. Try this out in Google or in Firefox. You will learn about your network. mediatest.webex.com. I put it into the chat.
In the chat. I tried that, and I must say, it really hit a nerve there. And I think it's maybe one of like the basic hygiene things you can do is really check out what's the setup in your home. Coming back to what Frank said, I think that really touched a nerve, and then try to shift the conversation to maybe your team, what can be non-imitating formats that you can use to stay connected as a team, and then try to bring the conversation, to the organizational level, because I think really if you try to rethink it on this level, there are so many possibilities. You shared some of them, and to really turn this into more of a pleasant situation. Before we had this session, we talked about how, for me, sometimes I'm in calls all day, and then it's really not a nice experience at all, right? So that can also be something from the perspective of well-being, just because now it's possible to have one call after the other. Maybe that needs to go into your book of rules for your team, not to have them one after the other. So maybe, Clarissa, how are you dealing with that day by day? What does your day look like? Was one of the questions from chat. Maybe we want to pick up now.
So on that one, I think it's crucial. So it's one of the big challenges whenever you are working from home all day long. is that you keep running from a meeting to the other one. So one thing could be to set up the rule of always starting 5 minutes after, either it is full time or half past, and always say 1:05 or at 1:35 you start, so that you always gives people that 5 minutes to break, to take a tea, open the windows, simple things, stand up, do a little walk. So internal rules on how you want to respect people's time, or just say we tend to always do 30 minutes or 1 hour meetings. So what about reducing them to 45 minutes or 25 minutes? It's often interesting to see how anyway you can go through all the topic by reducing time. It's just a matter of time efficiency. And again, there, if people are with their video on, be sure that it will be productive, because everyone is there, everyone is present, everyone is focused, everyone is watching to each other's. So there is no way that you are easily distracted by something else happening outside of that room. So I would say video definitely helps setting boundaries internally, but also with your customer. If you send out a meeting, just do it 5 past or 1/4 past, and shorten it to 45 minutes instead of 1 hour. That would be the way I would suggest you to deal with, because that's how I've started to do it myself, and that helped me to find a good balance of not just running from a meeting to the other one without taking time for myself and what my body also needs. If anyone wants to share any other experience on that,
maybe from the audience, yeah.
Curious to hear.
Yourself, yeah.
Exactly. Feel free to unmute and share.
In the meantime, maybe Isabel, I quickly share my screen to show what's happening on the Padlet. If anyone is still there, I try to capture the questions that were posed, and we can continue having the discussion there. So let me just quickly share it with people. And in the meantime, please feel free to continue asking. So I loved some of the resources Frank and Clarissa shared. Thanks for that. So you can use that here, some ideas and challenges, and we can continue the discussion and sharing some solutions maybe to those challenges. And then also some most important favorite quotes were saved and contributed by people who joined us. So thanks to everybody who joined us to do it. Have a look. I mean, there's some really good content here.
I mean, let me pick on these informal or brainstorming around. I mean, the virtual water cooler, the virtual coffee room, and so on. I think that is something mostly missed by everybody being not in the office anymore, but strictly at home. And I mean, funny enough, out of our experience, and we had some very good initial setups. We kicked off a research project that was, I think, 6 years ago. And by the way, Vitra was also part of that research project. And we found out it's extremely hard. And I mean, that was really way before COVID and all these things. We believe that, I mean, more and more people are not really working at the same place. You have multiple different offices. You have the eastern part of Switzerland and the western part, and you know all these problems around this one, how teams are really interacting and so on. We found it and extremely hard, and two things we found extremely hard. First of all, the office design was never built around creating a room where this could happen. Yeah, because a coffee machine itself is a legitimate or place where people really can meet. But if you're adding the virtual element to it, suddenly many people feel observed. So that was some very interesting findings. So to get these spots, the virtual spots, in an office environment, extremely hard, because everything is designed about physical presence. So it takes a lot of cultural change and also physical change in the office to make these places work. The second thing is, if you're having completely virtual coffee rooms, they work for a while, but out of experience, this is getting a bit tiring. And I think the problem here is that you're almost joining a formal meeting. Okay, we have our virtual coffee break now. Yeah, it's then you don't know who will be there. Yeah, that's something not happening in the office. You know exactly who's standing at the coffee machine. Do I have time or the willingness to talk to that person? Do I know the person? We can talk privately and so on. This is something extremely hard to mimic. I mean, there are ways, and we have technology for creating little, meetings where you see upfront before joining who's in that meeting. But honestly, that's up to some more research in these days, because suddenly I think the ice is broken about, using virtual technologies around video. I think the anxiety in using that is probably not eliminated, but I think everybody made his or her experience. So maybe it's more easy than 5-6 years ago. But it's very, very hard, and I wish I could give an answer. You need to find something which works in your culture, in your work culture. Sometimes I simply call somebody I have a long chat list, and then, look, I haven't spoken for this person since, I don't know, 3 months. I see he's, let's say, call it available or something. I drop a call, or a little chat message. Time for a coffee, something like this. That can work, but it's up to the culture. The smaller, let's say, scheduled coffee rounds, they work from time to time. They have to be small. That's my experience. So it's a hard problem to solve. That's my main message here. But revisiting this topic after all that happened last or this year is maybe interesting.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you for expanding on that, Frank. Looking at the time, I know we still have a lot to discuss and a lot to cover probably, but we would need to close it for today. Please feel free to, reach out to us if there's any other questions you have, so we can come back to Clarissa, Frank, and Tim with those questions. And I want to thank all of you for sharing on a personal level what you do, how you feel about video, your setup, what you see in office spaces around companies all over the place, for taking the time to be with us, and also obviously everyone who joined. And let's share maybe our next steps. Ola, just very quickly, if you want to stay in touch and you're not signed up to our newsletter yet, feel free to do so. You will be informed about what's going on. We also have coffee sessions, and coming back to what Frank said, yes, they are usually small, and then we break out into small groups, and then you have these 4 or 5 people that then can really deep dive into something. So I think it's also time to organize another one, ladies, right? Another coffee session. And so please join our newsletter to be informed when the next coffee date is happening. And the next virtual session will be in 2 weeks from today. And you will be emailed a link from Padlet, and also obviously this recording. So if you want to go through something again, you can do that at your own time. And with that, I want to thank all of you, and I wish you a lovely day. And I know we went a little bit over what Clarissa mentioned as a as a good time for a video meeting, but I hope all of you had fun, and we hope to see you again soon.
Isabel, thanks a lot, and Ola for organizing, inviting us. Find us on LinkedIn, ping us, and we have a video session, virtual coffee, whatever it takes, if you have more questions. Honestly, I simply leave the session running a bit longer here. If somebody still have a question, I'm around. I schedule time to have after the session. To mimic the analog thing in having a speech or a session, you always have the interesting things happening after the speech. So I just leave it running pragmatically. Who has a question? just stay in the call and have your question. No problem with that. But I think I stop the recording right now, and thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you from my side. Thank you, Isabel, Frank.